the billionaire's dog trained with a woman who once taught him courage. If you have ever believed that people change, stay with this story. Because sometimes healing does not begin in a hospital, it begins in the rain, with a man who thought he had everything, and a woman who once taught him how to be brave. Now, come back with me to the man who forgot what courage felt like. The rain came down in fine silver lines over the city as a black Rolls-Royce pulled to a stop in front of New Hope K9 Rehabilitation Center. The windshield wipers moved in steady rhythm, pushing away the weight of a late autumn storm. Inside the car, Tobias Greymont sat still, hands gripping the steering wheel as if it were the only thing keeping him from falling apart. Atlas, his German shepherd, shifted uneasily on the back seat. The dog had once dragged Tobias out of a burning car when the world around them exploded in fire and twisted steel. Now, a single crack of thunder made him tremble and hide his head beneath the leather seat. Tobias drew a long breath, tasting metal and rain. He told himself he was only here for the dog, not for himself. He had spent the past year hiding behind tinted windows in silence, running an empire of engines while avoiding the sound of one. But this morning, when Atlas refused to eat and whimpered at the hum of an elevator, Tobias knew he had to do something. He opened the car door. Cold air rushed in, wet and sharp. A figure was waiting under the awning, a woman holding a clipboard, her hair long enough to brush her waist. The streetlight caught the copper tone of it. For a second, the world tilted. Ivanna Alcántara. The name whispered through his mind like a memory half buried. Years ago, in a university parking lot, she had been the girl who stood beside him when his hands shook on the steering wheel of a borrowed car. "You are not afraid of driving," she had said back then, smiling. "You are afraid of moving forward." Now, she stood only a few feet away, rain beating on her jacket, eyes steady. "Still afraid of thunderstorms, Mr. Greymont?" she said softly. He froze. She remembered. He looked down at Atlas, who was shivering, and cleared his throat. "My dog needs help," he managed. "He reacts to noise." "So do most living things," Ivanna replied, her voice calm but not cold. She crouched beside the shepherd, letting him sniff her hand before gently brushing his ear. Atlas relaxed almost immediately, tail flicking once. "He trusts faster than people," she said, glancing up. "We can start today if you have time." Tobias nodded, unable to form words. Rain dripped from his coat as he handed her the leash. Their fingers brushed briefly warm skin, then distance. She led Atlas toward the covered walkway, the sound of her boots light against the concrete. Tobias watched, struck by how easily the dog followed her. He stood there for a moment, alone in the drizzle, staring at the place where her hair had swung like a banner behind her. Somewhere inside him, something stirred a memory of laughter, the smell of engine oil and cheap coffee, the voice that once told him to keep going. He almost called after her, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he whispered to himself, "It is just a program. 6 weeks, then we leave." Lightning flared across the sky, reflected in the glass door of the center. Through that reflection, Tobias saw his own face, controlled, pale, and exhausted. A man who had built machines to conquer fear and ended up ruled by it. Behind the glass, Ivanna knelt beside Atlas, clipping a small silver bell onto the dog's collar. The sound was faint, but clear, a single note that hung in the air like a promise. Tobias turned away, unaware that the sound he had just heard would echo through every quiet corner of his life until the day he finally learned how to answer it. Before we continue, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and is the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us continue the story. The following morning, Tobias Greymont stood by the large window of his penthouse. The city spread beneath him like a maze of glass and fog. The hum of traffic reached him faintly through the rain-streaked glass, but he barely heard it. His mind was still at the training center, the sound of that silver bell, the calm tone of Ivanna's voice, the way Atlas had stopped trembling in her hands. Atlas lay beside the couch, head on his paws, eyes half open. Tobias knelt and brushed the fur along the dog's back. "We are trying, right, buddy?" he murmured. Atlas's tail moved once, a small acknowledgement. Across the room, his assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Sir, the board meeting in 30 minutes. Would you like me to prepare the briefing documents?" Tobias pressed the button. "Cancel the meeting." A pause. "Sir?" I said, "Cancel it." Tell them I am taking personal leave." He ended the call before the assistant could protest. The truth was simple. The company could run without him for a while. His mind could not. Later that day, he returned to New Hope K9. The rain had stopped, leaving the world washed clean. Ivanna was already in the yard, working with another dog, her long hair pulled back loosely. She turned when she heard him. "Mr. Greymont, you came back." "I said I would," he replied. "You did not sound very sure yesterday." He almost smiled. "Neither did you." "Tom." She motioned toward the training pen where Atlas waited. "We will start easy. He needs to relearn safety before he can relearn obedience." Tobias stepped inside the pen. Atlas sniffed the ground nervously, ears back. Ivanna handed Tobias a short leash. "He trusts your presence, but not the noise around it. When the sound grows, you do not pull him, you stay still." Tobias nodded. The first test was simple. A recording of distant thunder played from a speaker. Atlas flinched, whined, and pressed against Tobias's leg. Tobias knelt and placed his hand gently on the dog's head. "It is all right. I am here." Ivanna watched quietly. "You see? He reads your pulse through the leash. If you fear, he fears." He looked up at her. "That is easier said than done." "I never said it was easy," she replied. "Only possible." They repeated the exercise again and again. Each time the sound came, Tobias steadied his breathing, lowering his voice, whispering calm instead of command. By the fourth round, Atlas stayed still through the thunder. It was not perfect, but it was progress. Ivanna smiled softly. "He is not broken, Tobias. He is only remembering." The use of his first name startled him. Remembering what? That the world once felt safe. Tobias exhaled slowly, the words sinking deeper than he expected. He looked at her, standing barefoot on the wet grass, sunlight breaking through the clouds behind her. She looked exactly as she had years ago, fearless, certain, alive. When the session ended, Ivanna unclipped the leash and let Atlas roam. "You can bring him tomorrow evening," she said. "We run night sessions for dogs with anxiety. Fewer distractions. Do you think it will help?" "It will help both of you," she said simply. As Tobias drove home, the late afternoon light shimmered off the buildings. The city no longer looked like a maze. It looked like a place he could walk through again. That night, when thunder rolled far away over the river, Tobias did not turn up the television to hide it. He reached down, touched Atlas's collar, and listened for the faint ring of the silver bell. Somewhere in that sound, he thought he heard Ivanna's voice again, steady, patient, and unafraid. "Before we continue, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new stories. It is quick, free, and the best way to help us share more emotional dramas with you. Your support means everything. Where are you watching from? Tell us in the comments below. Thank you so much." Now, let us continue the story. The next evening, the world felt gentler. The storm had passed, and the air carried the clean scent of wet grass. Tobias Greymont drove back to New Hope K9 with Atlas sitting upright in the passenger seat. The dog's ears were alert, no longer folded in fear. When Tobias stepped out, Ivanna Alcántara was already waiting by the fence, her waist-length hair tied into a braid that fell neatly down her back. She smiled at the sight of Atlas trotting beside him. "He looks more confident today." Maybe he just trusts you," Tobias said, holding the leash a little tighter. "Or maybe he trusts the man holding it." Her answer caught him off guard. She turned away before he could respond, motioning for them to follow her toward the open field behind the center. The tall grass shimmered under the fading light. "Today we add something new," she said, taking a small silver bell from her pocket, the same sound Tobias remembered from the first day. She clipped it gently to Atlas's collar. "When he hears this bell, it means safety. It means someone is calling him home." The bell chimed softly as Atlas moved. Tobias frowned slightly. "It feels symbolic." "It is both science and symbol," Ivanna replied. "Repetition builds memory. Memory builds trust. It works for animals and for people." They began the session. Ivanna's tone was patient, guiding Tobias as much as the dog. She explained each gesture, each sound, how a calm tone could shape behavior better than force. Tobias listened carefully. For once, he was not leading, he was learning. As the lesson continued, Atlas started responding faster, tail wagging, steps lighter. Tobias crouched beside him, repeating Ivanna's instructions. Each time the bell rang, the dog looked up at him instead of running away. Ivanna watched them with quiet satisfaction. He is remembering that noise does not always bring danger, she said. Tobias looked up, meeting her gaze. And you think people can learn that too? I know they can, she said simply. I have. The wind picked up, blowing strands of her hair across her face. Tobias caught himself wanting to brush them away, but stopped. He was not that man, not yet. When the session ended, Ivanna handed him a towel to wipe Atlas's fur. Their fingers brushed again, the contact brief but electric. Tobias felt his chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with fear. Bring him again tomorrow night, Ivanna said, stepping back. We will work on reaction training. It is not only about controlling fear, but trusting that fear will pass. He nodded. I will be here. As he walked back to the car, he turned once more. Ivanna was kneeling in the grass beside another dog, laughing as it rolled over for a treat. Her laughter floated through the air like sunlight after rain, warm, unguarded, and real. Back in the car, Tobias sat for a long time before starting the engine. The city lights stretched before him, and for the first time in years, he did not dread driving. Atlas leaned forward, resting his head on Tobias's arm, the small bell chiming softly with each bump of the road. That night, Tobias found himself unable to sleep. He opened his laptop and searched New Hope K9 rehabilitation program. He read about Ivanna's work with rescue animals, her dedication to therapy programs for veterans and survivors of accidents. There was a photo of her smiling beside a dog wearing a tiny vest labeled Courage Unit. He stared at the picture for a long time. She had taken her pain and turned it into purpose. Meanwhile, he had hidden his behind steel doors and boardroom glass. When thunder rumbled far away, Atlas did not flinch. Instead, he lifted his head, ears twitching toward the faint sound of the bell still hanging on his collar. Tobias smiled faintly and whispered, You are not the only one learning, my friend. The night felt lighter, as if someone had opened a window inside his chest. For the first time in years, Tobias Greymont closed his eyes without dread and dreamed not of fire, but of rain that washed everything clean. Before we continue, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming stories. It is quick, free, and helps us share more heart-touching dramas with you. Your support means everything to this channel. Where are you watching from? Tell us your city or country in the comments below. Thank you so much. Now, let us continue the story. The following week, the sky cleared completely. The grass around New Hope K9 sparkled with dew, and the air carried the scent of pine and fresh dirt. Tobias Greymont parked his car, watching Atlas jump out eagerly before he even opened the door. The dog's confidence was growing, and so was something inside Tobias that felt unfamiliar, something close to peace. Ivanna Alcántara waved from across the yard. Her braid was gone today. Her hair fell loose down her back, shining in the morning light. You are early, she said, smiling. I could not sleep, Tobias replied. He kept waking me up. I think he is ready for something harder. Good, she said, because today you both have homework. She led him to the larger training field. The space was surrounded by small speakers hidden behind shrubs, each one designed to play the sounds that usually frightened the dog's sirens, thunder, even the distant rumble of engines. We call this controlled chaos, Ivanna explained. The goal is not to remove fear, but to teach calm through it. Tobias nodded, tightening his grip on the leash. Atlas's ears flicked forward, alert. Remember, she said softly, do not pull him. Stand your ground. He needs to borrow your steadiness. Ivanna started the recording. The sound of a car engine echoed across the field. Atlas froze, tail low. Tobias knelt and whispered, It is all right, Atlas. I am here. His voice was firm but gentle. The dog hesitated, then looked up at him, chest rising with slow, steady breaths. Ivanna smiled faintly. Perfect. You see how he mirrors you? Every heartbeat you calm becomes his rhythm. The second sound began a thunder, closer now. Tobias closed his eyes, feeling the air vibrate. A flash of memory threatened to break through. Metal, smoke, the sound of glass shattering. His hands trembled, but then he felt the weight of Atlas leaning against his leg, steadying him. Ivanna's voice carried softly through the rain-scented air. He is teaching you too, Tobias. Trust is not one-sided. When the noise ended, Atlas sat quietly, tail thumping the ground once. Ivanna walked closer, kneeling beside them. He did it. And so did you. Tobias exhaled, realizing he had been holding his breath. I thought I was supposed to help him heal. You are, she said gently. but healing rarely travels in one direction. Audrey. They stayed like that for a moment, three shadows in the morning light, breathing the same rhythm. Then Ivanna stood and handed him the silver bell. Keep this. Practice at home. Let the sound mean something steady, not fragile. As Tobias took it, their fingers brushed again. The bell rang softly, the single note cutting through the silence. Their eyes met, and neither looked away. Later that evening, Tobias returned to his penthouse, the sound of the bell still echoing faintly in his mind. He placed it on the nightstand beside a framed photograph of his late colleague, the man who had died in the car explosion. Tobias had not touched that frame in months. Now, he looked at it differently, not as a monument to guilt, but as a reminder of what had survived. Atlas slept at the foot of the bed, breathing evenly. When thunder rolled far away, the dog's ear twitched, but he did not hide. Tobias smiled and whispered, "Good boy. Love." Then, without thinking, he reached for the bell and rang it once. The clear tone drifted through the room, warm and soft. For the first time since the accident, Tobias Greymont fell asleep to the sound of his own heartbeat, and it was steady. At New Hope K9, Ivanna closed the last file of the day. Outside, the same thunder echoed in the distance, and she thought of the man who once trembled at the sound of rain. She smiled faintly, whispering to herself, "He is remembering." Kojozao. And in that quiet moment, under a single flickering light, two lives that had once broken apart began to move in the same rhythm again. Before we continue, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next emotional stories. It is quick, free, and helps us keep creating meaningful dramas for you. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you so much. Now, let us continue the story. The next week unfolded quietly, the kind of quiet that carried both comfort and danger. Every evening, Tobias Greymont returned to New Hope K9 at exactly 7. It had become part of his rhythm work. Drive, train, breathe. Atlas now walked beside him without pulling on the leash, head held high, a different dog from the trembling creature he once was. Ivanna Alcántara noticed it the moment they arrived. "He trusts you now," she said, kneeling to pat Atlas' shoulder. "And you trust him, love." Tobias smiled, the expression still rare on his face. "It seems we are learning at the same pace." "That is usually how it works," Ivanna said, standing. Her eyes softened. Fear leaves when it realizes it is no longer needed. That night they worked on something new: distance trust. Ivanna placed Atlas in a sit position, then told Tobias to walk away 10 steps. "When I call his name, he will want to come to me," she explained. "Your job is not to compete. It is to remind him that trust can have more than one direction." Tobias nodded, stepping back. The moon hung low, lighting the open field in silver. Ivanna called softly, "Atlas." The dog's ears twitched, but he stayed. Tobias lowered to one knee, calling in a calm voice, "Stay." The moment felt suspended in air, the woman, the man, and the animal between them, bound by invisible threads of sound and trust. When Tobias finally said, "Come," Atlas sprinted straight to him. The bell rang against the dog's collar as he leaped forward. Ivanna clapped, laughing, the sound bright and full. Tobias laughed too, a sound that startled even him. For a second, it felt like the years had never passed, like they were back at the university parking lot, laughing over small victories and future dreams. When the training ended, Ivanna poured them both a cup of coffee from the small machine in her office. The smell filled the room, strong, earthy, familiar. "Do you ever think about what came before?" she asked quietly. Tobias hesitated, staring into the cup. "Every day, but less like punishment now, more like remembering a story I finally understand." She nodded. "Then you are healing." He looked at her across the desk. "What about you, Ivanna? Have you healed?" Her smile faltered just slightly. "Some days. Other days, I teach it instead." Silence settled between them, not uncomfortable but heavy with things unspoken. Outside, Atlas barked once, chasing the sound of another bell from a nearby pen. Ivanna stood and went to the window. "You know," she said softly, "I used to think courage meant running toward danger. But maybe it just means staying, even when it hurts." Tobias joined her at the window. "You taught me that once," he said. "You may have forgotten." "I remember everything," she whispered. For a long time they stood side by side, watching the lights flicker in the kennels. The hum of crickets filled the air, blending with the faint chime of the bell outside. Tobias felt the quiet between them stretch, but instead of fear, it brought calm. Before leaving, Ivanna placed her hand on his arm. Tomorrow, we will try exposure therapy. It means introducing controlled sound from your company's test engines. Atlas needs to hear it, and so do you. Tobias met her gaze. You are not afraid that I will fall apart? I think you already did, she said softly. Now you are learning how to stand again. On the drive home, Tobias replayed her words. They stayed with him longer than any echo of thunder ever had. Atlas rested in the back seat, breathing evenly, the bell chiming with each movement. For the first time, Tobias realized the sound no longer reminded him of fear. It reminded him of her voice, steady, calm, and patient. The sound of something beginning again. Before we continue, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next emotional stories. It is quick, free, and helps us continue creating meaningful dramas for you. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Share your city or country in the comments below. Thank you so much. Now, let us continue the story. The next day began with a pale sunrise spilling across the skyline. Tobias Greymont stood in his garage, surrounded by silent machines. Cars of every model gleamed under the fluorescent lights, yet he could not bring himself to start even one. The memory of the explosion still lived behind his ribs like an old scar that refused to fade. But that morning, something felt different. Maybe it was the echo of Ivanna Alcántara's words from the night before. You are learning how to stand again. He tightened his jaw and reached for the keys. When he arrived at New Hope K9, Ivanna was already setting up the test field. Small speakers were arranged along the fence, each linked to an audio file of Greymont Motors' engine prototypes. The idea was to expose Atlas to the sound that once terrified him and, in truth, terrified Tobias even more. Ivanna looked up as he walked over. Good morning? Did you sleep? Barely, he admitted, but I am here. That is all that matters, she said gently. Atlas trotted beside them, tail high, unaware of the test that awaited him. Ivanna attached the silver bell back to his collar and handed Tobias the leash. Remember, she said quietly, this sound connects you both. When you hear it, focus on what is steady, not what is lost. Tobias nodded. Ivanna pressed play on the remote, and the first engine sound roared through the air low, deep, mechanical. Instantly, Tobias's chest tightened. Atlas flinched, his body trembling. Tobias sank to one knee, hands firm but calm on the dog's shoulders. It is all right, Atlas, he whispered. It is only sound. We are safe. The engine noise grew louder, echoing through the open field. Tobias could feel his pulse racing, memories flashing, smoke, shattered glass, the desperate grip of a hand that never made it out. His breath came uneven, but he kept speaking, voice low and steady. Stay with me, Atlas. Look at me. Domalla. Atlas lifted his eyes, searching his face. The trembling eased, breath matching Tobias's. The bell rang once a single, clear note that cut through the noise. Slowly, the engine sound faded. Ivanna turned off the speaker, her eyes soft but proud. You did it, she said. Tobias was shaking, but it was not from fear anymore. No, he murmured. We did. She knelt beside him, her expression quiet and kind. You see, Tobias? Healing is not forgetting. It is remembering without breaking. Hugwin. He looked at her, the wind catching strands of her hair, the light falling on her face. For the first time in years, he saw not the past, but the present, and it was beautiful. Later that afternoon, Ivanna invited him to stay for lunch with the staff. They sat under the shade of a large oak tree, sharing sandwiches and stories. Tobias listened more than he spoke, surprised by how natural it felt to be among ordinary laughter. When the others left, Ivanna remained. She took a small framed photograph from her bag her late husband, smiling beside a rescue dog. He used to say fear is just love waiting to be redirected, she said. I never understood that until I met you again. Tobias looked at her carefully. He must have been a good man. He was, she said softly, but I think he would be glad that I am still teaching what he believed. A gentle breeze carried the faint jingle of Atlas's bell. Tobias reached out and touched her hand, uncertain at first, but she did not pull away. Thank you, he said quietly, for not giving up on me. She smiled, her eyes glistening in the sunlight. You never needed saving, Tobias. You only needed reminding. They sat there for a while longer, the silence between them full but not heavy. Atlas rested at their feet, the silver bell gleaming softly against his fur. When Tobias finally drove home that evening, he turned on the car engine himself. The sound no longer felt like thunder. It sounded like life. Before we continue, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next emotional stories. It is quick, free, and helps us bring you more heartfelt dramas every week. Your support means everything to us. Tell us where you are watching from in the comments below. Thank you so much. Now, let us continue the story. A few days later, the weather changed again. Heavy clouds gathered over New Hope K9, and the first drops of rain began to fall just as Tobias Greymont parked his car by the gate. Atlas barked softly, tail wagging. To Tobias, it felt like any other training day, but fate rarely warns before it turns. Ivanna Alcántara met him by the door, clipboard in hand. "We will try one last session with engine noise today," she said. "After that, Atlas is ready for certification." Tobias nodded. "He is ready. I can feel it." They moved to the training field as thunder murmured in the distance. The sky dimmed, the scent of rain thick in the air. Ivanna set up the speakers, while Tobias kept Atlas calm. Everything was routine until it was not. When the test began, a sharp burst of static suddenly cut through the speakers, followed by a loud mechanical pop. The sound was harsher than usual, raw and distorted. Atlas panicked, jerking the leash free from Tobias's hand. "Atlas," Tobias shouted, sprinting after him. The dog bolted across the field, the silver bell clanging wildly. A car horn blared from the nearby road, startling him further. Ivanna ran behind Tobias, yelling over the storm. "He is headed toward the woods." Mud splashed beneath their shoes as the rain poured harder. Tobias's heart pounded. He could barely see through the downpour. "Atlas," he called again, voice cracking. The echo vanished into the trees. They reached the edge of the forest, the ground slippery. Tobias's breath came in ragged bursts. "He was not supposed to be off-leash," he said, guilt thick in his voice. Ivanna touched his arm, breathless but calm. "This is not your fault. Fear surprises us all." But Tobias shook his head. "I should have stayed closer. I should have—" A sudden bark cut through the storm, followed by a sharp yelp. Tobias's face went pale. Without thinking, he dashed into the woods. "Atlas, namnowaka." Branches tore at his clothes, rain blurring his vision. He stumbled down a muddy slope and stopped short when he saw the silver bell glinting faintly near a fallen branch. Beneath it, Atlas was trapped, one leg pinned. The dog whimpered, trying to move. Tobias dropped to his knees, voice shaking. "Easy, buddy. I am here." He tried lifting the branch, but it was too heavy. "Ivanna!" he shouted. She appeared seconds later, soaked to the bone, eyes wide. Together, they pushed until the wood shifted enough for Tobias to pull Atlas free. The dog whined softly, licking his arm. Tobias cradled him close, trembling with relief. "You are safe now," he whispered, pressing his forehead to Atlas. Ivanna crouched beside them, panting. "He heard you," she said softly. "He came back because of your voice." Tobias looked down at the bell lying in the mud. He picked it up, the small chime barely audible under the rain. "No," he murmured. "He came back because he remembered what home sounds like." And for the first time, Tobias realized that the storm no longer scared him. It sounded like forgiveness. Before we continue, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next heartfelt stories. It is quick, free, and helps us bring you more cinematic dramas that inspire and heal. Your support truly means everything. Tell us where you are watching from in the comments below. Thank you so much. Now, let us continue the story. The rain had not stopped by the time Tobias Greymont and Ivanna Alcántara carried Atlas back to New Hope K9. The dog limped slightly, his fur soaked, but his eyes stayed alert. Ivanna wrapped a towel around him as Tobias knelt beside the table, guilt shadowing every line of his face. "It was my fault," he said quietly. "I pushed too far, too fast." Ivanna shook her head. "No, Tobias. He ran because the storm frightened him. It could have happened to anyone, but it did not happen to anyone. It happened to me. Again." His voice cracked, low and raw. "Every time I think I am healing, life finds a way to remind me that I am not." Ivanna placed a hand on his shoulder. "Healing does not mean nothing ever hurts again. It means you keep showing up anyway." He looked up at her, rain still dripping from his hair, eyes filled with the same exhaustion she had once seen in herself. "I do not know how you stay so strong." She gave a faint smile. "Because I learned that strength is quieter than people think. It is in patience, not power." For a while they said nothing. The sound of rain filled the room, steady and rhythmic. Atlas pressed his head against Tobias's knee, the bell on his collar ringing softly. When the vet arrived, Tobias helped hold Atlas steady while the small cut on his paw was cleaned and wrapped. The dog barely flinched. Ivanna watched them, her heart full of something that felt both fragile and certain. After the vet left, Tobias remained seated on the floor beside Atlas. "He came back when I called him," he said softly. "Even through the noise, he heard me." Ivanna nodded. "He came because he trusted the sound." Tobias looked at her, the words quiet but steady. "You taught me that sound. You taught me that trust." Their eyes met and held, the air thick with emotion neither of them could name yet. Outside, thunder rolled again, but this time Tobias did not flinch. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the silver bell. Mud still clung to its surface. He wiped it clean with a towel, then tied it back around Atlas's neck. "There," he whispered, "you are home." Ivanna smiled, tears softening her gaze. "So are you." The room fell into peaceful silence, broken only by the occasional chime of the bell. Tobias leaned back against the wall, his head resting beside hers as they both listened to the rain ease into a gentle drizzle. For the first time in years, Tobias did not feel haunted by the sound of thunder. He felt connected to the moment, to the dog lying between them, and to the woman whose strength had quietly rebuilt his own. When the storm finally passed, dawn light filtered through the clouds, touching everything with gold. Tobias looked at Ivanna and whispered, "Maybe the storm was never the enemy. Maybe it was the test." She smiled faintly. "And you passed, Tobias. Both of you did." "Loco." The bell chimed once more, clear and sure. The sound did not mark an ending, it marked the beginning of peace. Before we continue, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next emotional stories. It is quick, free, and helps us bring more heartfelt dramas straight to you. Your support means the world to us. Tell us where you are watching from in the comments below. Thank you so much. Now, let us continue the story. A full year passed after the night of the storm. The air around New Hope K9 now carried the scent of new beginnings, fresh paint, blooming gardens, and laughter echoing from every open window. The center had grown into something greater than either of them had imagined. Under the bright morning sun, a new sign gleamed on the gate: the Greymont Foundation, New Hope Rehabilitation Campus. Tobias Greymont stood beside it, hands in his pockets, watching as volunteers guided service dogs through exercises. His company had become one of the main sponsors of animal-assisted therapy programs across the city. Ivanna Alcántara walked toward him, her long hair caught by the wind, a clipboard in one hand and a silver bell in the other. "I never thought I would see this place like this," she said, smiling. "You built it," Tobias replied. "I only helped put the roof over it." Lol. They walked together down the gravel path where Atlas now trotted happily, fully healed and certified as a therapy dog. A group of children reached out to pet him, their laughter filling the courtyard. The bell around his neck rang softly, the same sound that had once echoed through a storm now ringing like music in the morning air. Ivanna stopped and looked at Tobias. "You know, he listens to your voice first now. Every time you call, he comes running." Tobias smiled. "He taught me how to call again." They reached the small memorial garden at the back of the campus. A plaque rested beneath an oak tree, engraved with words chosen by Tobias himself: "For those who taught us courage, and for those still learning it." Ivanna brushed her fingers over the letters. "You remembered," she said softly. "I never forgot," Tobias replied. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a bracelet made of silver links, with a tiny bell charm attached. It gleamed in the light as he held it out to her. "You taught me courage twice," he said quietly. "Once when I was a boy afraid to move forward, and again when I was a man afraid to look back. Let me stay this time." Ivanna's eyes filled with tears. She took the bracelet, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then stay, Tobias. Not as a promise, but as a choice. Arco." He smiled, the first true smile of peace she had ever seen on him. Around them, Atlas barked playfully, chasing the wind. The bell on his collar rang, joining the faint chime from Ivanna's wrist as she fastened the bracelet. The two sounds blended together, clear, bright, and unbroken. Tobias looked out over the campus, his voice calm and certain. Maybe healing is not about forgetting the storm, he said. Maybe it is about learning to hear the bell through it. Kumquaishan. Ivanna reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining as the morning light washed over them. And in that gentle golden hour, surrounded by laughter, love, and the quiet sound of trust reborn, Tobias